what advice are you giving to your agents to ensure your files get to the closing table? What are your make sures as you get to that point, or to make sure they get to that point, from a buyer jumping ship, or, trying to prevent the lender any mishaps or appraisals, et cetera?
So I would say it's kind of doubling down on good advice just in general when you're dealing with a client, is do your research up front with the client. Know who they're going to be using as a lender, so you can understand where they're coming from, the lending perspective, understand their financial situation as far as down payment, understand their living situation as far as do they need to be out of a place in a certain time period and stuff like that. You just need to really dial in on that. So it's like doubling down on the things you should be doing during your consultations regardless. I would say slowing down to write a really strong contract, not from the perspective of like a competitive contract, but a strong contract as far as making sure a lot of your timelines kind of line up, because that'll really help kind of set the expectations for all parties of like, we don't have most of the time you're not going to see a 15-day inspection window. So if you're doing a 7-day inspection window, well, you probably need to reach out to the inspector that you or the buyer that the buyer is going to choose, and find out if they can even schedule an inspection within 7 days. So things like that to kind of, because if you're scheduling it at the end of the inspection period, well, then you're going to have to extend the inspection period, and then you're going to have to there's a squeeze on that negotiation timeline, and then that pushes back your appraisal, and then that pushes back your underwriting. So really kind of identifying your timelines up front because of how the market is, I think is really important. And then of course, factoring in the particular situation of your client.
Mm-hmm. And we're also seeing a lot of agents, doing care calls to their clients, really letting them know that they're there. And communication, I think, is so, so key, especially with all the vendors as well, like Drew saying. I mean, when all this first, started happening, you could see the vendors that were adapting to what was going on versus the ones that were kind of like, oh, well, I hope it closes, so you could really see kind of the differences there. But communication is so, so key. And that's one of the things I love about our business is we get that extra layer of, the communication that the client needs, just because they needed that extra, warm, loving blanket around them to know hey, we got this. So it's one of those things of us not freaking out, so they're not freaking out. So it's that extra layer of the communication that's so, so important.
And to piggyback on that, I'd say when you're identifying the vendors that the client's going to work with, look for the vendors that have pivoted really, really effectively during this time frame. I know you guys at Tampa Bay Title, you basically just were like, oh, this is the new normal, we're going all virtual. You guys made a quick shift to that to make things easier on the process, because at this point there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainty. So it's whatever the people that are involved in the transaction can do to make that much more easy, then that's who you want to choose to work with, because things are harder now just because of the situation that we're in and the restrictions that are in place and stuff like that. So, revisiting which vendors you use and how they've adjusted to this is very important, I think.
And Mandy, you hit on.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go. No. You hit on something. You hit on something specifically that I thought of. I was watching it, like we all do, reading articles and stuff, and they said, you can either adapt to the market, or you can, obviously just kind of sit there and in a sense you have an excuse. So I think that was part of it too, is you have to adapt fairly quickly, because we have no clue how long this will last, and is this the new normal that we're playing into. So it's interesting to see, and when you said that, it kind of hit on the things I've watched. You adapt. Don't just sit there. I get it. We're all going through it. We're all having tough days, and but it's key to go through there. So
feeling the fear and doing it anyways. So
yep. Yes.